Interesting. Oh, hold on a second. Today we're going to be taking a look at a very cool new Apache 2.0 model called MiniMax-M1 -80K or -40K. I don't specifically know which one we're going to be testing, which leads me into my next point, because unfortunately, while this is open source, this is a 456 billion parameter MOE model, and I unfortunately do not have computational horsepower at my disposal to actually run this locally. So I will end up running it using either the Hugging Face Spaces that is up here so we can actually chat with it, or they do have their own little chat interface a la ChatGPT or whatever else you're used to seeing. So first and foremost, besides just being poised to perform very well, at least comparatively to open weight models, but also compared to closed weight models, we can see right here there are always the benchmark JPEGs that we may or may not trust depending on how we look at things. However, what's very interesting about this model, and really I am going to jump over to the research report for this because it is kind of confusing just to figure out what specifically they are talking about here. It natively supports inputs of up to 1 million tokens and generation lengths of 80,000 tokens, which is a very, very large amount. So an input length of 1 million tokens means that essentially, and what I will probably try to do, I can copy paste in an entire book into this and then ask it questions about the book, and it should hypothetically be able to maintain consistency, coherence, and memory about things that happened throughout the entire duration of that book. Beyond that, being able to output 80,000 tokens is like something that could perhaps get us a very solid Steve's PC website, or perhaps some other form of like code testing or something like that. Now, the reason I hopped over to the paper here is because they do mention this as well, like in the GitHub and on the Hugging Face card, but they talk about these tokens as thinking tokens. So basically, I think it was right here where they mention 40,000 and 80,000 thinking budgets. So it confused me because I was thinking, okay, can it think for 80,000 tokens and then produce its result, or is that just the cap of the amount of tokens it can produce as a response? And based off of what I read here in the research report, which I am kind of inclined to go with as ground truth, it does seem like this is a generation length of 80,000 tokens, which really is quite cool. Now, beyond this, there is like some complex like machine learning engineer style things in this paper that I'm not going to go over because I don't want to confuse folks, not because I don't understand them myself. But the cool thing here is essentially like if we look, it is far more efficient than comparable models in terms of the computational horsepower it actually uses up for a specific generation length. So that's what this chart right here shows where, okay, here's DeepSeek R1 and Qwen 3 235A22B, which is the Qwen 3 big MOE model. And basically as the context, as the generation length grows right here to these amount of tokens, it does seem like these go massively up in terms of the computational resources they require. So we can see how much more, say, energy these would cost to actually go ahead and produce that same level, whereas MinMax-M1 stays relatively low comparatively. So essentially that is the gist of this, and they talk about some lightning attention mechanism as well as something else here that, again, I'm probably outside the scope of oneself in this video. However, I did just want to mention this as it seems very cool, and it talks about a lot of efficiency gains while still being able to maintain comparable performance to things that are more expensive to run, I suppose one could say. While this is Apache 2.0, and for those capable of doing so, you can just go ahead and download each of these individual 414 separate safe tensors files at around 2 gigabytes each. Unfortunately, I don't have the computational horsepower to do so. So with that, we're going to do the next best thing where essentially there's a Hugging Face Spaces running this model. Unfortunately, after waiting a little bit of time, this just gave me an error. So, yeah. I will just hop over right here to this kind of chat.minmax.io. Unfortunately, and something I find extremely frustrating about this is, watch this. So if I type like, hey, how are you? I'm excited. Like, oh, the AI is about to respond. Nope. Sign in with Google. All right. No question too long. No query too complex. I call the bluff. All right, so I am just asking it to go ahead and generate a browser-based operating system that emulates the look and feel of an actual operating system. It is immediately jumping into HTML and JavaScript based, which is good to see. So basically, I am going to let it think for a while. I do have to say, I kind of find the way that the text like slowly appears onto the screen while it's thinking, I kind of like this, just I suppose from an aesthetic standpoint. I will go ahead and just collapse the sidebar. We'll let it think, and then we'll see what we come up with. All right, our desktop OS has finished. The script is of decent length and essentially it just tells us a little bit about it, but basically it says go ahead and just save this as an HTML. All of the CSS and JS are embedded, which is cool, and go ahead and run it. All right, okay, so I noticed a couple good things. There is a clock and it does seemingly have the correct time. There's a little menu bar right here, which doesn't seem to do much. We have a broken icon here, which unfortunately the picture for it doesn't show up. The grid is interesting. Let's see if I try to, okay. All right, well, this is definitely not the best result I've ever received. However, this is an open source model, and it is not the worst result I've ever received. I'm not 100% sure what the little hamburger menu down there is supposed to do. The clock is a nice touch, and this bar down here is also a nice touch. It did name the tab. So I am going to multi-shot this. I'm just going to ask it and say, okay, well, like nothing actually really worked, so could you please iterate and make it work? Version 2 is now completed, and it is actually listing terminal commands here, which would imply that it actually did go ahead and at least attempt to make a functioning terminal window, which would be really quite awesome to see. The only model that's actually done that in this test is ChatGPT O3 Pro. So let's just go ahead and take a look. I will peek at it in Chrome once more. All right, we have a file explorer. The clock has moved, so we can tell that this is a different version. Interesting. Oh. Hold on a second. And it's actually, so LS lists files on the device, and this actually did go ahead and do that kind of where you type ls and it, okay, oddly it appears above the command you enter, which is just a little obscure, but look at this. I mean, user at WebOS, it's giving us nice green syntax. Really, this is quite good. The window is something that can be moved around. Let me see what other actually will, like commands it told me I could do. CD into a folder and then go up one directory. Still, that's really actually, okay, so let's see, what folders are there here? There is just something named folder. Let's go into it. And then it should change to reflect that we are in no such file or directory. So that's actually good. It properly, like, okay, it probably won't, but okay, yeah, it doesn't have the command to make a directory. It is just like a web OS, but still, this is, ooh, File Explorer. Okay, so we have our desktop. We have documents, resume.pdf, and notes. So documents should be a folder. Let me do, does it have, probably not, but okay. I'm like trying real terminal commands here, which is not. If these logos or the pictures here were working, this would be like a top tier result. I'm not going to knock it too much for that. So you have to double click these to open things, and it seems like it won't just spam open multiple ones. It will just reopen it in a different random location, which is good. File Explorer, and then that opens based on there and based off these icons as well. And the clock is working. This is quite good. This is really a decent result. I have not had a model do a functional terminal here except for O3 Pro. All right, so it was a very impressive result, at least the second time around with the WebOS thing. Now, being that this model is touted for very good long context capability, I am just going ahead and copying the entirety of the book, The Great Gatsby, and we're going to paste it in and then ask for a single page, essentially book report. Very nice. Professor Bijan came out for this one. So basically, I'm just asking it to analyze 2 of the different cities in this book and compare them, like how they're, you know. All right, so now I just pasted in an entire book, and I'm asking it to write a 1-page book report. In this case, The Great Gatsby. We are going to see. So basically, Okay, so I copy pasted all. Hopefully it understands where the book starts and ends. It probably will. But I've asked it to generate a book report comparing East Egg and West Egg and the undertones of their differences and relate it to modern day society. Something that probably doesn't make much sense, but is akin to what you would find in a schooling environment. And we'll see. So far what I'm seeing here is correct. Man, imagine, well, I shouldn't say imagine because this is the case, but I suppose for someone of my age, imagine having this in like high school when you needed to do book reports and stuff like that. But bam, done. I mean, I'm sure folks in school today are probably doing such things. So it's quite cool. All right, we're getting our generated book report right now called The Great Gatsby and Modern Societal Divides. Oh, what happened? I'm really glad I was looking at this and it just said, let's move on to a different topic. It cut itself off. Did I get rate limited, or I'm not 100% sure what happened here. It just abruptly cut off mid-response as we saw it was generating the book report. I'm going to retry it. I'm probably going to get like rate limited here at this point. I don't even know if that's a thing with this, but we're going to try it one more time and see if that. All right, it is once again generating our book report right here. The Divide of East and West Egg in the Great Gatsby and Modern Society. I'm like scared now it's going to cut off again. Okay. East Egg, the entrenched elite. I should probably note, like, if you're not familiar with this book, this is all going to be gibberish, so I do apologize. But from what we're seeing here, it did correctly. I mean, look at the text. You could also say, well, maybe the model was just trained on this book, which is also a possibility, but we'll give it the benefit of the doubt and think it is specifically referencing in the pasted text. All right, good. This did correctly finish. We have our book report right here. I've asked it to make an HTML website for Steve's PC repair, but I said the repair space is pretty crowded, so this needs to be more than a website. It needs to be an experience. And I instructed it to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, so I am quite interested to see what this comes up with here. All right, let's check out Steve's experience. Your tech, our expertise. Okay, so far I'm not wowed, but it is not bad. Okay, it does have hover effects. Take a virtual tour. Oh, so put in like placeholder images as a virtual tour of our repair shop. Okay, they do work, and if there were actual images there, it would obviously work. We have some... okay, this is where... All right, I'm not... Let's see. Contact testimonials. I'm not very blown away by this. This is rather lackluster, but I'm more comfortable saying this because it did such an awesome job on the web OS that this might just be a failure in my own prompting. With that, and because I don't want to have another web, result like that, I think what I'm going to do here is go into the actual spaces that was here that we had tried earlier. Well, unfortunately, I tried it. It didn't work. So I've just gone ahead and basically taken one of the prompts here from this Hugging Face Spaces where the model's hosted, which unfortunately didn't work for me. And I just removed the canvas part right here and just asked it to use JavaScript to make a particle explosion effect when the user clicks anywhere on the page. It's interesting. I'm seeing it here reference example code. And again, this is kind of why I tend to not go ahead and try the default things like that are shown in samples, because it could kind of just have a sample of this implementation perfectly done that it references to output it here, which would make sense if you want to showcase something, you want to showcase it at its peak. So I just find that interesting though here that it is kind of like showing or referencing examples and things like that it should do, when basically all I have done is given it a prompt right here. I haven't told it about any examples or anything like that. So I find that interesting. We have our generated result right here. It is relatively short, so that is good. Hopefully it does work. Let's just go ahead and take a peek at it. Well, it did correctly do what was asked of it. And I guess I have less to say about this than I'd anticipated I would. So, yeah. All right. With that, that is going to wrap up testing this model. Obviously, I'm not so interested in testing things that are not running locally currently, but being that this is something that is open source with an Apache 2.0 license, I do think it is worthy of testing because someone who has the computational ability can actually download and run this on their own machine. Overall, long context performance, I would say, is relatively good based off of the sample size of 1, where we fed it the entirety of the Great Gatsby book and then asked it to generate a short book report about it. It did properly reference things in the book, and the book report was in line with what I had asked for. Its browser OS on the first try was rather poor, but on the second try, when I actually asked it to fix the issues, it did go ahead and make a fully functioning terminal, which, as I said, I've only seen O3 Pro do. So that was rather impressive. Other than that, I guess I don't have a ton to say. I definitely wanted to test this because of its long context capabilities and the fact that it is open source and can hypothetically be run locally. So overall, very cool. And the fact that this is so efficient, at least compared to running other models as we saw in the paper and things like that, is exciting. So that's going to wrap it up. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.